Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Garden Hour with MU Extension. My name is Gwen Funk, and I am in Northwest Missouri, and we have lots to talk with you about today. So we will just go right ahead and get going here. I just want to remind you that we do have horticulture specialists that are scattered around the state. You can kind of find your area and kind of color code the name and see who you need to talk to. But again, if you have a question that you think might be more specific to one of us, then feel free to reach out to any of us. We are more than happy to help or forward the question on to someone who might be able to help as well. Also, remember that we have a live stream and snippets. You can go to youtube.com MUIPM and watch the live stream of this, or if you have to miss or leave early, you can go back and see the archived videos. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Zack, and he is going to talk about our weather. Sounds like it's get hotter. Zack, I don't think we're hearing you.
Apologies, Gwen. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's weekly weather summary. And for the first time in July, it's actually been, looking back, a pretty calm past 7 days. Here, if we look at our recent precipitation, 7-day precipitation, and these are radar estimates, not a lot around the state. And in fact, a few spots on eastern Missouri especially have received no rainfall over the past week. And while we've seen maybe up to an inch, even an inch and a half in southern and south central Missouri, really just a few tenths here and there across the state. And I think we definitely needed to dry out after an extremely wet end of June and early July, but it's definitely been a bit of a pattern flip with not as much rainfall. The benefits of a calmer week here is if we look at our current watches, warnings, and advisories here, we only see a few flood warnings on the Mississippi River, but in contrast to previous weeks, no flash flood warnings and no flood warnings on some of our smaller rivers and streams across the state. And so good to see those waters coming down to a more near normal level there. And then on the dry end of the side of things, if we look at our U.S. drought monitor from July 16th, this was released last Thursday. What we see is very little drought across the state, and we really don't have any drought concerns at the moment. You might notice in southwest Missouri, there's a small area of this abnormally dry conditions. This is a spot that's gotten below or behind normal on precipitation over the past 30 to 60 days, but no major concerns at the moment. And so great to see us getting here into late July and not having any drought issues. Big contrast to this time last year. And a big reason for all of the improvement is here we see our percent normal for July precipitation so far this month. And everywhere you see the greens and blues, we're ahead of normal for precipitation. Obviously, areas like, for example, along the I-70 corridor, south central Missouri, that are well above normal. But in general, it's been a wet July for the state. And so we can look at sites like Columbia, where we are 8 inches nearly above normal for our precipitation this month, almost 5 inches above normal in St. Louis, and 2 inches above normal in Springfield. But there are a few spots around the state that are behind on rainfall for the month and starting to see some more short-term precipitation deficits. And so we see Cape Girardeau a little behind on rainfall in July, west central Missouri here, getting into Cass and Bates County, and then up in the northwest, a little dry. And in most spots, I think it's welcome to dry out a bit, but we will have to keep an eye on this over the coming weeks as well. But otherwise, we've got one more week of July. It'll end as a wet month. And if you look at temperatures, it looks like we're going to also end as a cooler than average July, which is great for this time of year. But it's also our first month since January where we've had below average temperatures. So quite the pattern flip there. And so as we have 7 more days, I was more confident in maybe breaking some of these records a few weeks ago. But Columbia is still pretty close to that all-time wettest July on record, which was receiving 12.14 inches of rainfall in 1981. Currently, we're sitting at 10.89 inches here in Columbia, and we've been stuck on that number. So that's good enough for our fourth wettest July back to 1889. But looking at the forecast ahead, I don't think we're going to make a run at that all-time July record. St. Louis, 7.45 inches so far this month. Good for the 10th wettest July back to 1874. They might bump up a few more spots there, but doesn't look like a lot of rainfall in the coming week. And so while some impressive numbers here, I would have thought mid-month that maybe we could finish out with a few more rainfall events and break these records, but we dried out just in time for those. And so looking ahead at the next week, I think this drier pattern is going to really continue and start off very similar to what we saw last week, but heat is going to make a return late in the period here, and that might be more of the story there. And so on the left, we see our maximum temperature forecast for today, right about average for most of the state. So upper 80s to around 90 degrees, and then a little bit cooler to the southeast where we have some rainfall in the area as well. But if you look on the right here, this is our surface chart for today. Again, you see some showers to the southeast, also some showers in northeast Missouri with a cold front that's going to be moving south. But all of this rainfall is going to be very isolated. And that's what we've seen really over the past week, is that we have seen with cooler temperatures, less thunderstorm activity and more shower activity. And so while these showers have popped up, they've been pretty isolated. And even if you get under one of these showers, really most spots have only received a few tenths of an inch of rain from these showers. And so if we look at our forecasted precipitation amounts today, you see it's nothing impressive, maybe up to a few tenths in northeast Missouri, but totals are going to remain light. And that's going to be really the theme moving through this week. No day in Missouri is going to be completely dry. We'll have some of these showers that can move through, but no big organized rainfall chances and no heavy rainfall amounts. Instead, we'll really kind of focus more on temperatures. Today and Thursday will be very similar with those highs near 90. But as I mentioned, a pretty weak cold front will move south. So cooling off more towards the mid 80s on Friday and Saturday, but then it'll be a slow increase Sunday through Tuesday. If we look at these high temperatures, by Tuesday, we're looking at the mid to upper 90s in Western Missouri and 90s everywhere else across the state. And so really look for those temperatures to ramp up by early next week. And if we put all of our rainfall together over the next 7 days here, this is what's forecast through next Wednesday morning. Blue on this map shows up to 3/4 of an inch. For most locations around the state, our weekly average rainfall this time of year is 0.8 inches. And so what this forecast shows is, even though we're going to see some rainfall, a drier than average week for all of the state in the forecast. So something to keep in mind is we could see another dry week ahead. Now, the big story is going to be what happens maybe in that week 2 period. So looking at the first week of August, and if we look at our Climate Prediction Center 8 to 14-day temperature outlook, lots of red across the United States. And so high confidence and warm temperatures in that week 2 period. And on the right here, I want to show a forecast product from the Climate Prediction Center for excessive heat. And so you see a lot of lines on this map. And so there's going to be heat across most of the country, but the area they've really got outlined here in the center of the United States here is a high risk for excessive heat, which includes Western Missouri, and most of Missouri is in a moderate risk. And so we're interpreting that as really a 40 to 60% chance of a heat wave in that week 2 period. And certainly it looks like our friends in Oklahoma and Kansas to the west are going to be much hotter, but the question will be, how far east into Missouri does that heat move? In addition to this heat wave to our west, we're also expecting pretty dry conditions in that second week. And so if temperatures are very warm, might need to watch for mild signs of potential drought stress there. And so I mentioned the risk of excessive heat, but what does that really mean? Just to give us an idea of how warm it might get, these are two weather model forecasts, and this is for the high temperature next Thursday. So keep in mind a weather forecast 8 days out. We have some uncertainty here, but you can see they're really picking up on the heat here in the center of the United States. And so on the left is one model. This is the US GFS model. Has triple digits in Missouri by Thursday with upper 90s. The European model on the right, a little cooler, but still most of the state in the mid to upper 90s. And so this would be kind of heat advisory level warmth. And so we really need to watch the forecast over the next week. In addition to the next 2 weeks ahead, the Climate Prediction Center also kind of updated their forecast for the fall. And so briefly, I'll share these, but a pretty similar pattern with this is our monthly outlook for August. The entire US predicted to be warmer than average. Fortunately, most of the heat looks to stay off to our west where there's higher confidence in those forecasts and to our east, but still expecting warm temperatures in Missouri here. And then not a lot of confidence in what's going to happen with rainfall. So you can see here equal chances of either dry or wet conditions. And so low confidence in the current precipitation outlook. And then if I move ahead, these are the seasonal outlooks valid through the end of October that cover that fall period. And you'll notice not a lot of change from the monthly outlook. And so the fall pattern really looks warm, looks like really drought and extreme warmth to our west in the United States, but looks like most of the country, including Missouri, will be warm. And we'll have to watch and see how far east this dryness moves here into the fall. But other than that, that's all I've got. So enjoy the nice weather over the coming week because week 2 certainly looks hot.
All right, thank you, Zach. It looks like we'll have to be monitoring our plants and adding some water, maybe if needed. So I appreciate that information. So we're going to move on. I wanted to just remind you that if you have any questions during the presentations, we have Debbie, who has renamed herself, I believe, as Ask Questions Here. Actually, no, I think that is someone else. Anyway, you can post your questions to Ask Questions Here, and those questions then can be addressed. So make sure that you do that if you can. And then our next presenter will be Debbie, and she is going to talk to us about tomato fruit disorders.
I had to figure out how to unmute myself. Sorry about that, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yes,
Okay,
Debbie.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, so last week we talked about, for the hort terminology, we talked about what is abiotic. And so I thought I would follow up this week with what are some of the abiotic tomato issues that we're generally probably seeing, especially with the wet year, some of the different tomato problems and issues that are occurring. So what I'd like to do first is just do a reminder of what is abiotic so everyone can be on the same page. So essentially it's something that's not living. It's going to be anything with soils, nutrient deficiencies, temperature extremes, storm damage, animal damage, nutrient toxicity, chemical injury, mechanical injury, girdling. So these are all things that are not going to be a disease of any kind or any kind of insect damage. So just so that we're all on the same page and we understand what abiotic means. So let's look at some of these different types of issues or actually disorders that are occurring that are abiotic that we're probably seeing in our tomatoes as of right now. So we can have a lot of poor or no fruit set. And there's multiple reasons as to what that could be. We could have nighttime temperatures that are going to be below 70 degrees. I'm sorry, yeah, above 70 degrees. Sorry about that. are below 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And so this past couple of weeks, we've been pretty close to that 55, or at least where I am. I know we got down to about 58 one evening. Daytime temperatures that are above 90 degrees combined with low humidity, and/or if there's a drought, or if there are hot drying winds that are also occurring with those temperatures. Dry soil can cause blossoms to dry up and actually to fall off. So during the drought season, past 2 years, we probably saw some of that. Too much nitrogen fertilizer, what that does is it makes the leaves grow and we'll have less of our fruit set. Cold temperatures when you actually plant in the spring can actually keep the plants delayed a little bit from actually growing, which then delays the time that it takes in order for those plants to bloom. Insufficient sunlight, so we need at least a minimum of 6 hours of direct sunlight on our vegetable gardens, and lack of good air circulation or lack of pollinators. Those are multiple reasons as to why there is either poor or no fruit set. Failure to ripen, and this is actually from my house. I've got a lot of tomatoes. They just seem to be sitting there. They're not turning red, although this morning when I watered, I did see a red one and I got really excited. So temperatures that are below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, or if they're above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So as I said, temperatures where I am, a couple of nights it got down below 60 degrees. And so that's probably one of the reasons why mine are not ripening. Compacted soil or overly wet soils can inhibit the root growth, and that has an effect on the ripening. Low potassium, because potassium is important for our plants to actually grow fruit and to produce seed as well. So those are some of those issues as far as the failure to ripen. Yellow shoulder is also another issue that can occur. They can be yellow along the tops here, as you can well see. They could also remain green, which is a potential. And then when you cut them open underneath that yellow or that green, they're going to remain and have some white or some green tissue or growth underneath of that regular tomato growth. They're not 100% sure what is associated with this as far as what specific adverse weather, but it does occur. There are some varieties that are more prone to having yellow shoulder disorder than other varieties that are out there. So take note if you've got a specific variety and it's got yellow shoulder showing up, you may not want to grow that in your garden, perhaps in the future. Then blotchy or uneven ripening. We also call this gray wall, and you can see the different coloration right here. It's not ripening totally red across the fruit itself. Then it's also an indication of inadequate potassium. So again, potassium is important for fruit and seed growth. You can have compacted soil. Could also be too much nitrogen. Could also be high temperature with a high relative humidity. You could also have a lot of foliage that's growing on the plant. And so there's so much of a canopy that internally, if there's tomatoes that are growing, they may not get enough of the sun. So they could be a little blotchy as well. Blossom end rot. And we see this one all the time. We always see remedies that are out going across the internet about blossom end rot and how to prevent that. What blossom end rot is, as you can actually see, is the end of the blossom part of the fruit development is where it actually will turn a darker color. It can be a deep brown, and it can also be sunken. So some varieties are more prone to this than others. For example, the Roma type tomato varieties do have a tendency to have blossom end rot more so than the other types of tomatoes that are out there. It is due from a lack of an uptake of calcium by the plant due to inconsistent watering. It's not because we don't have enough calcium in the soils. Missouri soils have plenty of calcium. It's just that there's inconsistent watering. And so therefore the roots are unable to uptake the calcium that's already existing in the soil. Cat facing, and I kind of like the name of this one. because there's lots of interesting designs that our tomatoes show when we have cat facing. It is a deformity that actually occurs when the flower is actually growing. So during the formation of the flower itself is when cat facing actually starts to occur. It too is located at the blossom end part of the fruit. It is caused by cold temperatures during flowering. It can also be high nitrogen fertilization and improper pruning. So again, another reason why everybody wants to get those tomatoes in the ground right away. I know I do. I want those fresh tomatoes. But by waiting just a little bit longer, you could also be avoiding some of the issues that cause cat facing of your tomatoes. There are some varieties that are very large fruited, and some of those have a tendency to have cat facing more so than some of the other types of varieties. Zippering, and this is an interesting term. I like that it's called zippering. This also occurs during the formation of the flower. What actually happens is the anther on the flower itself actually sticks to, because that end there is a little sticky, a little tacky, and it will actually attach or stick to the developing fruit itself, and then it stays attached and it becomes a scar as it continues to grow. Sometimes it can go all the way from the top of the fruit all the way to the opposite end of the fruit, going up and down in those fashions. There can also be an open hole on the zippering part of it. So you can see those issues are occurring right there. And those actually can split open. So you want to pay attention to if your tomatoes actually have some zippering. And if you start to see it before it gets too bad, go ahead and harvest that fruit off of the plant. The only control is to select varieties that are less prone to the occurrence of zippering. Cracking, and I have this on my one tomato that I do see, and I've gone ahead and I've taken it off of the plant before it actually started turning red. They can be radical growths. They can be concentric growths. So they can grow in that circle or they can grow up and down essentially along that fruit line. And what that means is that the plant, the fruit itself is actually uptaking more water into the fruit before the actual skin around that fruit is actually able to grow and expand with that additional water that's inside. And so it kind of bursts itself open a little bit, and that's what's cracking is. And so that can be over fertilization, that it just grows too fast. It could be extreme fluctuations in temperature and soil moisture. Could also be prone to not having enough foliage on the plant to protect it from the sun. And some varieties are just more prone to cracking than others. But the main one is that it actually bursts open because inside grows faster than the skin itself. Sun scald is another one that we have a tendency to see. Usually this is going to occur more often when the temperature gets really warm, the plant is set fruit, they're starting to develop and turn red. However, there's a lot of sun out there. It does start when the tomato is actually still a little green. So you can see that in that below picture. The more sun that it can get, the more that damage that tomato can actually have. I know during the drought, when we had really high temperatures in the 90s and the low hundreds, some folks were putting up umbrellas or putting a type of a sheet or a cloth that would still cover the plant, not touch the plant, to protect it, just so that it would not get sun scald. White core is also another one that we can see, and this usually occurs when there's a lot of stress on the tomato, and it's going to be tough on the inside. It's going to be a little whitish on the inside, and those can be, it can be a hard tomato to try to still continue to eat. We also call it corkiness of the tomato fruit itself. Low potassium could be one of the reasons for this, as well as just going through and looking and deciding and choosing on some of the newer varieties that are less prone to this disorder. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Debbie. A lot of information in that presentation and a lot of disorders that we can learn about. So I appreciate that. Next, we are going to hear from Jennifer, who is going to answer a question we have about walnut trees. This came in from the Garden Hour page, so I will let Jennifer take it away. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Gwen. So we had a question come in along with some photos, and the question is, I have what I thought was a young black walnut tree that is just starting to bear nuts. However, the nuts are more oval shaped and the holes are fuzzy and sticky as compared to a black walnut nut. What kind of walnut or other nut tree is this? And does anyone have any thoughts on this before I give you the answer? All right, so this is an English walnut. So we've all looked at this as horticulture specialists and come to the consensus it's an English walnut. It's not a black walnut. And just a little bit about English walnuts. They do prefer full sun. They like moist, rich, loamy, well-drained soil. They are intolerant of shade and poor wet soil. So you can see it needs to be planted in a very well-drained area. It does not plant very well, so it is difficult to transplant because it has a deep taproot. It does not do well in hot, humid climates. And in the United States, English walnuts are grown commercially in California. So we don't grow them here in Missouri. They are grown out west where it is drier. They don't have any serious insect or disease problems, and they do produce the chemical known as juglone, which you may have, if you have black walnut trees, you may be familiar with juglone, the toxin that it produces. So juglone can affect the growth of other plants, including azaleas, rhododendrons, blueberries, peonies, tomatoes, peppers, and potatoes. And for more information, here is a link that you can go to learn more about English walnuts. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, the walnuts and hickories, they all kind of look similar. So you have to kind of look at the little nuances of the plant and to figure it all out. So good information. All right, next we are going to hear from Dhruba, who is also manning the Ask Questions here board. And Dhruba is going to talk about soil health improvements in the garden. Take it away, Dhruba.
All right, I'm sorry. So I forgot to unmute my mic. So can you hear me okay? Gwen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It takes me a bit to get to the unmute button as well.
All right.
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gwen. So today I'm talking about how do we improve our garden soil health. So let me talk briefly about the soil health. So the soil health is the ability of soil to function as a living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and human beings. So soil health is also known as soil quality. So soil quality means the soil has good physical, chemical, and biological properties. So now the question is, how do we improve soil health in the garden? We can improve garden soil by various methods. I'm talking briefly about some of these measures here. So the number one measure is testing your garden soil periodically, like once in every 3 years. So soil testing provides information about nutrient content in the soil. It also provides the information about other soil properties such as soil pH, organic matter content, and cation exchange capacity. Soil test report also provides crop specific fertilizer recommendation. The test report also tells us whether we need to apply lime or gypsum in the soil or not. And if yes, so it also tells how much we need to apply. So the first step to improve garden soil is we need to follow the guidelines given in the soil test report. And early fall season is one of the best times for testing soil from the garden, because we will have time to apply any amendments such as lime, gypsum, compost, or any other organic manure to prepare the soil for the next season. Another option to improve garden soil health is making and using compost. MU Soil and Plant Testing Lab has recommended maintaining 4 to 6% of the organic matter is optimum for garden soil. So if our garden soil has less organic matter content in the soil test report, we can also make and use compost. So for making compost, we can utilize plant residue and animal manure available in our garden and farm, but make sure we should not use any disease and insect infested plant materials and weed seed or the crop residue that has seed. We can also use animal manures to make compost, but we have to compost them properly and fully, and should be well decomposed before we apply to our garden soil. And we also need to be very careful whether there is any herbicide residue in the plant materials we use for making the compost. Another option to improve our soil health is planting cover crops in the garden. We can plant these crops to cover the ground during fall and early spring. We can plant these crops right after we harvest our main crops in the fall, or just before harvesting the main crops in between the row of crops. So cover crops provide many benefits, such as reducing soil erosion, increasing the organic matter content in the soil. It also helps to suppress weed infestation in the garden and weed growth in the garden. So there are different plant options for the cover crop in garden. We can plant some root crops such as tillage radish and turnip, and they are winter kale. If we plant legume cover crops such as cowpea or winter pea and hairy phage, they fix free nitrogen from the air, and they add nitrogen to our garden soil. We can also plant some grass cover crop, for example, cereal rye, winter wheat, and oat. So they produce a lot of biomass in the fall and spring, and they add residue to our soil as a source of organic matter. So I think so. There are some links provided in the chat box about the garden soil testing, making and using compost, and planting cover crops in the garden. So that's all I have, Gwen.
Perfect. That's really good information. Okay, I am going to do a short presentation on my roadside revelations, things that I see as I'm driving around. And let me go ahead and share. And this is kind of, the exposure here is a little bit overexposed in the photo, but basically I was driving along a gravel road up near Graves Chapel Extension and Education Center up in, it's on the border of Atchison and Holt County. And I just happened to see these little red spikes of flowers, and I'm using spikes just generally here. And at first I thought, well, we've got some cardinal flower. But then I got to thinking that's way out of the habitat for cardinal flowers. So I wanted to see maybe what that was. And I was glad that it was on a gravel road, because I kind of stopped quickly on that. So what it ended up being is a flower that's called standing cypress. This is in the morning glory family. And it's also called scarlet gilia. I believe is how that would be pronounced. And we are just barely on its range. It's more of a southern plant. It likes to be a little bit warmer. So I told you that Graves Chapel is kind of, up here in the corner of Atchison and Holt. So kind of in this range right here. So you can see we're just out of the zone, but this was planted on a south-facing slope. So it was able to take hold and grow. And there were several plants along the way. So it can act as an annual, and it does self-seed easily. And the leaves were just really pretty. They were just finely divided, kind of feathery looking. And I just thought it was a plant that was noteworthy. You can see in the little box here that it does like full sun, and it can tolerate a wide range of soil conditions. And again, and this is one that's drought tolerant and deer tolerant, which in most of the state of Missouri, we kind of have some problems with deer browse. It does attract hummingbirds, so that is good as well. And it might be good in a rock or pollinator garden. So I just thought it was interesting to bring that plant to your focus maybe. And again, my photo is a little bit overexposed, but it was just a show-stopping red color that you could see. So another red flower that I've been seeing along the roadside is called royal catchfly. And this is another short-lived perennial, but it does reseed. And I don't see this one, I've not had any experience growing standing cypress in my own garden. So I don't know exactly how well it spreads or if it's, aggressive that way. But I know with the royal catchfly, it tends to stay in its spot, at least where I have it. I'll see it popping up around it, like the clump gets bigger, but I don't see it just randomly popping up all over the yard or in other parts of the garden and that kind of thing. Again, it's would be good for a rock or pollinator garden. It's great for hummingbirds, deer and drought tolerant. So it grows really pretty well. It probably grows about 3 feet-ish high. And you can find it all around the state, but probably having it in North Missouri, we've just kind of brought it up here and it's establishing itself. So not necessarily in its main range historically, but it does grow north of the Missouri River for sure. Some other red flowers, or when you're putting red flowers in your garden, some of the things that you might want to think about in landscaping anyway is that you can have red can give you the sense of harmony, or it can give you a sense of energy depending on what you pair it with. And in the roadside garden that I was seeing, it was kind of paired with whites and purples, which kind of gave it a sense of harmony. But it can also, if you pair it with green, that can kind of give you, it's a complementary color, so that gives you that energy sense that's there. And then other red flowers that you might have in the garden might include columbine, which would be an early spring blooming plant. And that would be in more moist, shady areas. I've got it in full sun and a little bit drier, but that's really pushing it. It's extreme. And then you can see cardinal flower there as well. It looks really nice with the yellows. And cardinal flower, again, is more of a shady, more moist type habitat. And then we also have coral honeysuckle, which is a vine, and fire pink, which is another prairie plant. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of maybe some native flowers that you might be able to use to bring in red to attract some hummingbirds. And that is all I have for that. So let me stop sharing. And let me pull up the next topic here.
Gwen, there's
Yes.
a question in the chat box. Is it allowed to gather, in other words, can we gather these different types of flowers from the roadside and bring them home?
The last that I heard, and I would have to double check on this, so don't totally quote me, but you do not dig them. Absolutely do not dig them from the roadside. You may be able to collect seeds and move those seeds to your area, but it would be best to check with the county highway or whoever maintains the roadsides, or if it's bordering a property, it's always best to get permission before you do any of that, but definitely don't go in and dig. And hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, next we will have Jennifer, who is going to talk to us about some plant ID identification. So Jennifer?
Thank you, Gwen. And I cannot see the chat, so I need you or Debbie to tell me what the answers are when I ask, okay?
Can do.
All right, so I have pulled some photos off of the Ask a Master Gardener website. And toward the end, I've got a couple others that people sent to me by text. And this first one here is one that we see every summer about this time. We see these small red fruits, and some people think that they are cherries. And they'll ask us, what kind of cherry is that? Well, so I've just told you it may be a cherry, but in the chat, what would you think this plant is? I'll just give you a few seconds. And then one of you tell me what's being
I hear
said.
sand plum and hawthorn.
All right. So it is a
That's all
wild
I'm
plum.
seeing.
And you
Crabapple?
will start seeing these around the state. Okay. So this was posted on the Ask a Master Gardener website, and somebody was wanting to know what these were. So these are not cherries. They look very much like a cherry, but they are wild plums, and they don't taste very good. And I learned that the hard way. So I did eat a few, actually one or two a few years ago, and decided they weren't very tasty and didn't eat them again. But the birds like them and other critters like them, and you can make wild plum jelly. So I've had some Kirksville Master Gardeners that have made wild plum jelly and shared it. And once you add all that sugar, it does taste pretty good. All right, next one. What is this plant? What are some of the responses?
I think you've stumped them. I don't see any answers yet or guesses. Oh, Rose of Sharon.
And that is correct.
Yay.
So this plant is a Rose of Sharon. This also was on the Ask a Master Gardener Facebook page. These are in full bloom right now, and this year they look really brilliant. I mean, I think we've had a lot of rain, so I think that is what has really brought out their colors. The white is just a very vibrant white, and the pinks and the purple, they're just very vibrant this year, I think, compared to other years. And we have had just plenty of moisture, so I think that's been good for them. So in this photo, I have some of the different colors of Rose of Sharon flowers you may see, and some of you may have this plant growing in your landscape. On the right at the top, I have a little Rose of Sharon seedling. And if anyone grows Rose of Sharon, you know that they can become pretty weedy. And underneath the Rose of Sharon plant, you will have a lot of little saplings that come up. So I find myself weeding these out actually quite often. Several times a week, I am weeding out the little Rose of Sharon seedlings that keep popping up in the area around my plant. All right, on the lower right, or in the lower right corner, I have the seed pods, and I will go and cut those seed pods off. Usually in the fall, mid to late fall, I will cut those off because I don't want those dropping and producing seed, but they still find their way to the ground. And like I said, I do pull out the seedlings, but I do recommend cutting those pods off, and that may help eliminate so many seedlings the next year. All right, what is this plant? Anything in the chat?
Mulberry.
That is correct. So that is a mulberry, and most gardeners know that mulberries are a pretty weedy species, and I do find myself cutting those out of fence lines, and even in my garden, they will pop up. So you just never know where a mulberry is going to pop up. They produce fruit, and then the birds carry that off, and that's why you just never know where you might find a mulberry tree. What is this one?
Briar, I hear. I see. Yeah.
All right. This is Greenbrier. And this too was on the Ask a Master Gardener Facebook page. Somebody was wanting to know what this plant is. So this is one you really don't want to have in your garden or have get started. It is viney, it has thorns, and it is one that you actually all these I'm showing you, you want to get rid of. You want to cut them out or spray them. Although the Rose of Sharon, I love that one, but the little seedlings you've got to pull out. So this is one that you definitely want to get rid of. What's this plant in the grass?
We have a wild violets.
Correct. So these are wild violets, and these are a good food source for bees. So, there's mixed feelings about what to do with this plant. And if you're okay having wild violets in your flower bed, your garden, or your lawn, just let them be, because the bees will like you. The bees will be happy that you left them the violets as a food source. But if you don't like the look of the violets and you want them out, you would need to use a broadleaf herbicide to control them. What about this weed?
You may have stumped them.
All right.
Oh, cocklebur we have.
Somebody saying cocklebur?
Yes.
They would be correct. This was on the Ask a Master Gardener Facebook page, and they were wanting to know, is this cocklebur or burdock? And this is cocklebur, and you can identify it as cocklebur because it is taller. It's a taller plant than burdock. It has smaller leaves than burdock. Burdock has very large, almost elephant ear looking leaves, and it is lower to the ground. The cocklebur, particularly in this photo, has light colored leaves, and most of the time you'll see burdock with a real dark green leaf. So the leaf color is just different. It's a little lighter on the cocklebur. This is a plant you want to get rid of. You don't want that to produce the little cockleburs that will get stuck in your dog's fur or will get stuck on your clothing. So pull this out or use a herbicide to get rid of this one. What do you think those little black insects are?
We have thrips, aphids.
Well, I'll say I'm not 100% positive, but I do think it's some type of gnat.
Fungus gnat?
These photos actually came from the Ask a Master Gardener Facebook page, but during Garden and Grow, our youth gardening program on Monday, we had a lot of these black winged insects, which I do think are fungus gnats. They were all up and down the stems of our tomato plants. And then yesterday, as I was putting this presentation together, I went outside to get a photo of them, and they were nearly all gone. I couldn't find very many at all. And this is the photos I took yesterday. So you can see they're still out there, but there's not very many. But on Monday, they were just covered. Well, notice in the photo on the left that our garden, actually our extension garden, it's made up of 10 smaller gardens that are about 10 by 8 plots, okay? Each child has their own plot. And as we go through the summer, the plants get closer, they grow closer together, and it gets pretty dense in there. So you can see that, it's pretty full, and they water every time we meet, which is Mondays and Thursdays. So it's moist. These gardens are always moist. The plants are close together, and it's humid under those plants. And it's just, I think, more of an ideal environment for those fungus gnats to thrive. And then as the garden dries out, I think they just start going away. But we have a lot of organic matter in our soil, and I think they're coming up out of the organic matter when it's nice and wet and we have the right environment. And I am noticing that other people are seeing these also. I mean, I've had some texts, I've had some emails, and then the Facebook page had the photos. So just be aware that they're out there. And we didn't do anything. We just left them. I don't think they're a concern. Next one. What is going on here? What is it? And anybody know what's going on here? All right, I will tell you. It's a starving tomato plant. So on the Ask a Master Gardener Facebook page, somebody wanted to know what was going on with this tomato plant, that it's a month old and it has not grown. And it's just simply not getting enough nutrients. So what needs to happen is you need to add compost or decomposed manure, or just more of a nutrient-rich soil. You can buy a bag of garden soil with fertilizer in it, but it needs to be pulled up and put in some richer soil so it can get the nutrients it needs to grow and thrive. And I believe this is the last one. This came out of Adair County, and this it's pretty. And so I thought I would show it. And one of our master gardeners, her son found this insect, and she sent me this photo. What do you think this is? Take a look at the thorax of this insect up there just past the head, between the head and the abdomen. Does that help give it away?
We have assassin bug in the chat.
Correct. So that is an assassin bug nymph. I don't see these very often. I don't see these nymphs very often that look like this. But that's what this is. And if you do see assassin bugs, if you see this one, at this stage, or if you see an adult, that'd be, probably about an inch or two in length and gray. Don't kill them. They are beneficials. They will give you a nasty bite, and that will, it will affect your fingers or your arm for a while. It kind of numbs it. But they are predators. They're predator insects. So don't kill them if you see them. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was a lot of fun. Testing our knowledge. That was good interaction. Okay, next we have Debi, who is going to test our knowledge some more with some hort terminology.
Yeah, let me pull this one up. So the term that I have for us for today is cladophil. So I want to know, if we could get the poll to go up, is this a flattened stem resembling and functioning as a leaf? Is it a normal stem that is functioning as and resembling a leaf? Or is it really a flattened leaf that does not function as a leaf? So I figured I'd let you guys kind of take the poll, see what you guys think. Actually, I wasn't sure about this, and if you were on last week, you probably would know. I stole this from one of last week's presentations. So give you just another couple of minutes or seconds here. Got about 15 answers. Anybody else want to try? All right, I will go ahead and share the results. End the poll, share the results. So 40% of you say that it's C, it's a flattened leaf that does not function as a leaf. 33 of you say that it's a normal stem resembling and functioning as a leaf. And then 27% of you say it's a flattened stem resembling and functioning a leaf. Finally, I got one where you guys, the most of you were incorrect. I hate to say it like that, but however, it's hard to stump you guys because you were so smart out there. So the actual answer is it's a stem that has limited growth, which acts as a true leaf, providing the function of photosynthesis to the plant. And it is true leaves are actually reduced. They could be considered scales or spines for the plant, whereas it's the flat part is actually the stem. So here we have a picture of asparagus. And so the asparagus is going to have, you can actually see the full long stem here. And this, of course, is after it's done producing the fruit that we, or the vegetable that we eat. And then you'll notice there's a lot of green growth that comes out of that as well. And so those are going to be a flattened stem that's very, can be short and or at least have limited growth to it. And it actually provides the chlorophyll that the plant needs. It acts for that photosynthesis of the plant so it can continue to grow. And then all of our different holiday cacti are actually have cladophylls as well. And so they're flat. We all think that this is going to be the leaf when in reality it's the stem. And we notice that the flowers themselves actually come out of the end of those stems. So just one of those terms that's out there. And I appreciate you all doing this and bearing with me each week. And I finally got you guys. It makes me happy. And I hope that you learned this. So, but again, you guys are so smart when it comes to this. So thank you.
Okay, I think we will call that the end of our garden hour. Let me go over a few things here with you, just so that we are on the same page with things. Hold on just a second while I get things. My screen is doing weird things. Hold on. Oh my goodness, what's happening? Sorry about that, folks. Okay, here we go. All right, so thank you so much for joining us today. Remember that we are here weekly from noon to 1 p.m. and we really like to hear your questions. So if you have a question that you would like us to answer during the garden hour, you can submit it at the website that you see here at the bottom, ipm.missouri.edu town halls. And then also, if you want to save all of those wonderful resources that have been dropped into the chat, you can go to the top of your chat menu, and there are 3 little dots that are there. You click on the dots, and then it will just say save chat, and it will save you to your Zoom file on your computer. So you would kind of have to look for that in your files. And then also just to remind you, we have horticulturalists that are scattered all over the state. Feel free to reach out to us at any time if you have any questions. And I believe that is all, folks. We are giving you a couple extra minutes here. So if you do have a question, we can stay on here for a little bit more and we can answer in the chat. Just let us know. Otherwise, we hope you enjoy your day. And please join us again next week and tell your friends about us. Thank you.